Hey everybody, I'm Desiree and I'm here with my husband,
Sidney.
And we are very excited with what we have to share with you tonight. So we hope that you've had a chance to view our 25-year anniversary video, and if you haven't, be sure to take a look at that. In that, we share with you our journey of an imperfect marriage, needless to say, and one that also shares the experiences with some of the resources that we've tried to use for our marriage, some things that we found useful, others that we didn't. So it's just a video that is filled with some insight that, maybe ought to offer you some guidance and direction as well.
And tonight we hope that you gain the opportunity to see that in reality that couples do struggle in their marriage, and that is most of marriage does have some struggles. Does that mean you are a bad person? Does that mean that you are a
that you married the wrong person,
or
right?
or any of that? No. Or that something's gone wrong? No, that doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you're struggling and that you are looking for a way to move on from that.
And I think one of the things in our reflection of our years together is just really how well equipped were we to handle those struggles? And here's the truth of it. We weren't.
We weren't, no.
And that's where, again, we share some of those resources in our 25th anniversary video. But what we have found through them are some very powerful things through our experiences that, again, we've narrowed it down to 3 keys tonight, that if you're in a position where you're just questioning, is there any hope for your marriage? We're here to offer you the answer of, yeah, there's hope for everybody. There's hope for every marriage.
There is hope.
It's just a matter of, how well equipped are you to work through your marriage and the struggles that you are facing? Because as what you shared, it's normal. Struggle is normal. And that's, what we're here to offer.
Correct.
So as we think about finding hope for your marriage or any relationship in your life, we first have to consider, where does the struggle even come from that gets you to that point? And as we think about the struggles, they come from 3 areas, which are a difference in perspective,
or your expectations,
and a manual that you have for one another. So let us explain these for a minute. So when we think about difference in perspective with you and I, we definitely have some differences.
Yes, we do.
So I think about difference in perspective on how to raise kids or how to correct our children.
Yes, and then there's how about when you're doing a project around the home or the house?
Yes, we definitely have some difference in opinion on those. Or how to manage our finances, or how to, manage our home.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different ways that, these are just a few examples, but how difference in perspective can be really something that causes some friction and some struggle in a relationship.
Yes. And then you go on to expectations. Expectations that I have for you and expectations you have for me.
For sure. So I can say without question, expectations such as he should show up in a certain way, he should act, he should feel, he should respond in a certain way in any situation, that in itself causes some discomfort, some frustration, some disappointment. And I do know that there are times that I will admit that I could make you not showing up in a certain way mean that, you don't love me.
Yeah.
And that's what expectations do to us.
Expectations. And all of that, I think, is a culmination of the manual that we write. That manual that we don't realize that we have written through our experiences in life. We've written those manuals of what we expect and what we perceive from one another.
Yes, and so that is just one of the more, empowering things that we really had no idea that we had a manual for each other. And when you take a look at that, the perspective and the expectations that we have for each other, those differences that arise, when you step back from that and you see, okay, this is actually an unwritten book.
It is.
That we hold for each other.
A very, very technical manual.
Yes.
A very technical manual that if this, then that happens. And unfortunately, that's not that's definitely not the way it works.
Yeah. And so we're going to share a little bit more about these things as we go along today, but just want to put that out there. Start to be curious about ways that maybe your perspective, your expectations may be leading to you having that manual that may be causing some friction in your relationship with your spouse. So somewhere along the lines, as I was sharing my frustrations about my wonderful, sweet husband here with someone, they told me a phrase that I really didn't want to hear. And that was, the only person you can change is yourself. And I didn't like that because for me, and I'm sure this is for a lot of you out there, it makes it feel like it's giving the other person in the relationship a free pass. A free pass just to continue showing up how they are, showing up in ways that, you feel are hurtful to you. And so I didn't like that. But as you consider the expectations, the perspective, the manual that we just shared with you, it makes a lot of sense that the only person who I can change is really me. I can have those expectations all day long and that manual all day long. Doesn't mean that, your spouse is going to change. Now, as I sat with that, I thought, you know what? One of the hardest things, though, about this statement is it really doesn't tell you how that is going to help make a shift in your marriage and your relationship to make it better the way you hope that it would. So this is our first key that we're going to share with you. And as we go on that, so one of the things that I felt was hard about this is it was accountability for me. It asked for me to be responsible, to take a look at myself on how I was showing up in our relationship. And that can be hard when you feel like you're not valued, feel like you're not loved, when you just kind of feel like, okay, but your spouse is still not showing up in a way that feels supportive of you. That can be tough. And so with that, the easier answer, rather than looking at yourself, would be to say, okay, fine, I'm going to just change out my spouse. There we go. That will be the answer to my happiness and to, bettering the relationship and the marriage.
And I think a lot of people believe that changing out is the proper way to do it. Change out if you don't like your job, you don't like your employer, you change out your job. You don't like your house you're living in or the neighborhood, you change your house. You don't like the car you're driving, you just go buy a new car. So why not, if you don't like the spouse, what they're doing, you just change them out. And that solves it, right?
Right.
No. That doesn't solve it at all. No.
But it definitely takes off the accountability for you and what you could possibly do to help change that relationship.
Yes.
So here's the catch. When you're going around thinking that changing things outside of you is going to equal your happiness, when it comes to marriage...
Well, over 60% of second marriages do not make it. Over 73% of third marriages also end up in divorce.
So I think that's some pretty good statistics to consider when you're trying to blame the other person for your happiness and you're trying to blame them and wait for them to change or to change them out and you will be happier. So this brings me to think about a movie with Dolly Parton called Straight Talk. And in this movie, she is visiting with a reporter in one of the scenes. And he really struggles in his relationships. You remember that?
I believe so. A lot of relationships from what I remember on the movie.
Yes. And Dolly gives him this very interesting advice. She tells him that, okay, the problem with the girls that you go out with, they may look like different packages on the outside. They may look like peas or carrots, but inside, they're cornflakes. Each and every one of them are the same. And so even though he's changing them out, changing out the relationship, it still ends up the same every single time.
And I think that's a wonderful observation. However, one of the things she doesn't point out is, what is he doing? What is he changing about himself? Where is he going? And what does he look like on the inside? to attract something other than cornflakes.
Yes, and I think that's the big thing, because in that story it was like what we're sharing with you is he was looking for happiness outside of him, and if it didn't work out in one place, let's just change it out for another and see if that works. And of course, you're happy in the beginning until
you see the cornflakes.
The cornflakes come to the surface.
Yes.
So there really is power in believing the only person that you can change is yourself. As you take accountability for you, you start to work on you. Oh my goodness, the changes that can occur in a marriage, as we've seen in our own relationship, can be very powerful. Now, I do want to offer a disclaimer in that, though. If you are in a relationship that is abusive, emotionally or physically, you do need to look out for yourself. Changing you may not be the entire solution. Right. Go get yourself some help and, of course, heal yourself. But there are certain relationships that, yes, they are dangerous and you do need to get out of. That being said, doing the change on yourself, also be careful you're not doing it because you're expecting the other person
to change. No.
To show up differently.
Right. This is a change for you to find your happiness, not for them to be happy, but hopefully they'll find their own happiness.
Yeah, because I do run into that here and there where people are like, they go around trying to please the other person and trying to make that other person happy. And that's not what we're talking about either, for sure. You do the change for you to make you happy in ways that are genuine to you, and just watch how that can shift the relationship. And that's what we're here to help you with. That's exactly what our programs are here for, and that's what we're here to help you with. So this is really fun today, and I hope you continue getting more out of this as we go. But just speaking for myself, I know letting go of criticism and judgment and seeing anything negative, thinking that things should be different with you, has been hard for me. But as I have made that progress in myself, how's that felt for you?
I think it opened up me to be able to, one, feel a little safer, feel like that I could share, that I could not feel like I was, like you said, being judged. I wasn't feeling like I was being judged. I could share my thoughts without criticism. So a huge opening. And I think I did the same thing. When I made some changes in my life of looking for you more empathetically, looking at you with looking for your feelings and your thoughts, and trying to really take into consideration what they were.
Yeah.
And how did that help you?
Well, I would have to say, just for me personally, a big thing that's been important to me is just feeling that emotional connection, and for you making those efforts just to be just empathetic, like you said, that in itself has been huge, to feel like I'm understood a little bit more and like, you care. So just making small changes about yourself and recognizing, those areas that could just improve that relationship. It makes a huge difference, but it's not easy to make those changes.
No, and I want to talk a little bit about that. They weren't done at the same time by any means. Sometimes you would be doing things, and I would recognize, and that would create a space for me. And then other times I would be, that empathetic or that space, and you would be able to open up or be more in tune.
Yes, and so I think the point to that is we don't always progress at the same time, and you know what? There's times where only one of us were doing the work and the other one was not, but because, someone is willing to do something, that just makes a lot of the difference. And, we're not saying that conflict or struggle is all on one person. It's all one person's fault. Because the fact is we are two imperfect humans coming into a relationship. So what that really means is we each have a part of ownership, no matter what goes on. Could it just simply be like, I know in my case, it's that dang manual, that perspective, that what I want to make things mean and what I read into it, where I feel like I've been wronged, and it seems like, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And the fact is, okay, my accountability piece is just, okay, how is that manual showing up to add to the problem? Ooh, that's hard to take that look at yourself.
Right.
So I think that's a really big piece, just to recognize that it's not always one person's fault or, the other. There is ownership on both parts. In all situations, there is that opportunity. So, so I think one of the biggest pieces is just knowing that the only person that you can change is yourself. That means that if you're unhappy in the relationship, that you have full responsibility, full accountability to be able to create your happiness. Now, as you've listened to this key that we have shared with you, we want to leave you with one question to ponder.
And that is, one thing you could change right now in how you specifically show up, what would it be?
So as you think about that, as we go into the next two keys, keep that in mind. Because remember, the only person you can change is yourself. So what would that be? What change would you make if you could do it right now? So as we move on to the second key that we want to share with you tonight, one of the many things that we work on with couples and individuals in our programs is the choice that they have in their perspective. So as we go back and reflect on how I continually chose through my manual, through my perspective, through my expectations, to see my sweet husband here as wrong, as someone who, I just viewed a lot of negativity in your behaviors towards me and towards our family, and that's what I was choosing to see. But what I failed to recognize is in that negative view, it was really a choice in perspective, how I was choosing to see you.
Right. And I think the important part of that is why. Why do we choose to see the negative? We find out that the brain wants to look for negative. Why does the brain want to look for negative? Well, danger. Danger, we have to stay alive. If we're not looking out for the negative and we're not looking for danger, we would die. Naturally, the brain's going to look for that.
Well, and that's the biggest piece in that is just when you bring that into your marriage.
Yes, it is. That's that negative. When you bring that looking for negative, when you bring that looking into your marriage, into any relationship, you're going to be looking for danger. And so everything's going to be a fear-based, instead of looking for how we can grow and prosper and flourish.
And I can definitely say in our time together that the brain wants to see your spouse as the enemy, as the dangerous thing. And so that's something that needs to be challenged. And again, how you challenge that is by offering your brain options to say you do have a choice. You do have a choice in what perspective you want to have towards literally any situation that occurs. And that perspective is going to influence how you feel about your relationship, about your spouse, and the outcome that you get as a result of that. And you know what? You will always find evidence for what you want to see. Whether it's in your relationship, in your marriage, towards your children, your workplace, life in general, whatever you want to see, you're going to find it.
Yep, and that reminds me of a parable I heard the other day, or I've heard before. It's a watchman watching over a city, and a traveler comes by, and the traveler asks the question, well, what type of people live in this city? And the watchman asks a very simple question, what type of people live in the city you just came from? And the traveler starts to explain that they were rude, they were backbiting, they were nasty people. And the watchman says, well, that's the type of people that live here. And the traveler, of course, I don't want those type of people, and moves on. Short little while later, another traveler comes by, and the watchman stops him, and the traveler asks, well, what type of people live in this city? And the watchman again asks a very simple question, well, what type of people live in the city you just came from? And the traveler explains that they were loving, they were generous, they were very, very fun, and he hated to leave, but he needed to move on. And the watchman says, well, that's exactly the type of people that are here. And of course, the traveler, wow, I'm going to go in and enjoy. Yeah. And those two very distinct pictures, all from what's inside of the traveler. What is his view?
Yeah. And I think that's the point, is the city was the same. It was how the travelers viewed it, what they were looking for, what they wanted to see in that city. And this analogy applies to marriage as well, that the spouse can be the exact same person, but what are you choosing to see in them? What do others choose to see in them? What do they choose to see in you? And that really does influence the experience in the relationship. So the point is, how you want to experience your marriage and the relationships in your life are entirely up to you. Now, let's say for a minute that you are working hard on your perspective, yet you still find yourself stuck in those same negative brain loops. What then?
Well, we have some professional advice from a highly respected therapist. How about we take a look?
Yeah, sounds great.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Still being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well,
What?
tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive, and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop it.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so
Well, I don't make change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! What are you, nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say...
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! I mean, how are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Kathy?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
Right.
Are you ready? Mm-hmm. All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Well, wasn't that a fun video?
That video was extreme. Yes, it was. But what it always shows, wonderfully illustrates, is that you always have a choice. You can either see the negative, or you can find the positive in your spouse, your relationships, your whatever it is you're working on.
Yeah. And, I had an example come to mind as I was thinking about that. So there was a situation when I was disappointed in my sweet husband's behavior and feeling like I wasn't loved or appreciated. And I had a very powerful coaching session with one of my wonderful coaches that I also work with, because yes, coaches have coaches. Yes. And through this session, here I am sharing with her how I didn't feel loved and I just kind of felt distanced from you. And she offered me something in that session, and what came out of that was me choosing to see some of the things that you do participate in, as ways of showing love to me. And I hadn't viewed those things in that way before. And as I started to notice these different, I guess you could call them acts of service that you were doing, it was like I was beginning to see, my sweet husband here through fresh eyes again. And through those fresh eyes, I actually have to admit, it was like falling in love with you all over again. Just from me stopping seeing the negative and me stopping feeling like I was a victim somehow, and me choosing to see through a different perspective. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I think I've had some similar experiences, a little shorter than that, but definitely some experiences where I've seen, looked at you differently, looked through a different perspective, and I've seen that brightness, that wonderful, the young girl that I fell in love with so many years ago. So
changing perspective can really be powerful, but it's not always easy to stop. But it is possible. Yeah. So as you've considered the stories that we have shared with you through this key on perspective, if you could change one thing right now in the way that you viewed your spouse and whatever negativity that you see in your spouse, and if you could change that, what would it be? How would you view them differently? And if you did that, how would it help you have more love, more compassion, more empathy towards your spouse?
And realize that it does take a lot to change your perspective. It takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a long time. We're talking 30 days just to break that old cycle, and another 30 days to start to build a new one, a new habit, new cycle, and more on top of that. So give yourself credit that if it takes you 6 months, a year, or longer to make a true change in your behavior and your perspective.
Yeah, and I like the way you pointed it out. It takes consecutively 30 days.
30 days, yes.
And consecutively another 30 days. And that's why with our programs that we suggest, you know what, you join our program for a year. Give yourself a good year to make the changes that you desire in your life, because it does take time. So yeah, this is just a wonderful exercise to think about how impactful this can be with your relationships and with your marriage. And next, we have our third key that we are excited to share with you. So here we go.
Here we go.
So I'll confess that for a lot of years of our marriage, I never considered who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be remembered. So with this third key, we're going to work on defining who you want to be. So part of the way I know that I've shown up for a lot of years is I felt like the victim, where I would complain, I would judge, things that you did as negative, and I would be very frustrated. And in that, I will admit, I did not show up for being very kind or compassionate towards you, because I was just stuck in my victim story.
And I think I'm the opposite way. I was victim. I felt a victim, and so therefore I would show up insensitive and whatnot, and I would be very uncompassionate and unempathetic to your needs. A little bit of stonewalling in there, and in turn that would, I guess, we fed back and forth off of each other.
Yeah. And you know what though? Again, giving ourselves credit just for the human aspect of that, where our brains are always looking for the negative anyways. But as we learned in our second key, we also always have a choice.
We do. We have that choice. We can just stop it.
Yes, stop it. Now, something that we have always had available to us in our marriage, and you have it available to you as well, is the option to have compassion. The option to...
to be understanding. Yes. Go ahead. And thoughtful. And thoughtful. A very wonderful option.
And to show up being caring about the other person and really what they could possibly be going through, and being willing to set aside your feeling of being offended.
And I think a big one for us especially is being curious about the other person, or what the other person's going through, what they need. Curious is a huge door opener in that.
And when emotions are high and offenses are present, though, these things can be hard.
Yes, they can be. But we have a little secret for you.
So when it comes to situations that occur with our spouse, within any relationship really in our lives, how we view and respond to the other person tells us about who we are. It doesn't tell us who they are. And that's a pretty powerful piece as we consider defining who we want to be and how we want to show up in situations. Now, others' actions and behaviors may give you a little bit of insight into them, but unless you're really in their head, you honestly don't know what's going on for them. And what you do have 100% insight into is what's going on in you, in your head. That's why this is just such a powerful piece, because it gives you that opportunity to reflect on who you're being and if that's really who you want to be in some situations. So to help you with this, we have a little exercise that we would like to share with you, and you're welcome to participate, or you can go back over this in some worksheets that are included with this video and do it aside as well. But go ahead for a moment, and you can either close your eyes, keep your eyes open, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and just think about a situation that, you know what, it wasn't that great that has occurred. You didn't show up as your best self. You felt maybe a little offended. And think about that for just a moment. Now, as you think about that situation, consider if you were at the end of your life, looking back on this situation, what really is the most important thing? As you think about that, just consider, is it really the most important thing that you're right and proving how the other person is wrong? Is it the most important thing that you feel like the victim? Or is the most important thing maybe something like the relationship is preserved? That the person knows that they're loved? Or that you show up without being in anger or frustration, that you try on compassion or curiosity? What's the most important thing about that relationship or that situation? And as you think about that, notice if you were to show up in that situation, being that different version of yourself, knowing what really is most important, how would that feel? What would be going on for you? Now consider for a moment, how might that affect the other person? How might they feel different or respond differently with you showing up in this different way? And as you think about that, really, what might the outcome be for you to just stop and show up being this different version of you? So, as you thought about that, did you discover anything about yourself? Did you find anything different? How might thinking about situations from that perspective of what's most important influence the way you show up in other situations down the road?
And as you discover who you want to be, you can take this one question I think that's really important. How would you want to be remembered in your relationship at the end of your life, or in that situation at the end of your life? That's a very profound question. And I think that's where that's where hope is. Where we started out. What is hope? Hope is that. What do I want out of my life at the end of it?
And I think that's very powerful. I've heard an exercise before where it's, if you were at your own funeral, what would people say about you? What would you want them to remember about you? And bringing that back into your relationship when times are hard, when you do have those moments of contention and frustration, when judgment comes into the picture, and if you really just say, I'm at the end of my life, what would this spouse say about me? What would people say about me? How do I want to be remembered? I think that is such a beautiful, powerful piece. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So one final thought that we want to leave you with, and it's something that we come back to frequently when we have confrontation, conflict occurring, is, you know what? We never would have married a bad person.
No.
You know, and let's be honest about that. Neither would you. You would never marry someone who is going to belittle you, who's going to hurt you, who's going to, find fault in you, really. That just doesn't feel good. And when you think back to those times of, that fun of dating and rekindling, that love and excitement, you never would have chose someone that's a bad person that really, when I think about you constantly, I'm like, you have a good heart.
Yeah, and you do too. And you have a wonderful heart. And I wanted to think about, as we shared this evening and this afternoon and whatever it is for you, I wanted you to think about something. And the important part here is, are you making the change for you? That's the whole point of this, is to make a change for you. If you're making it for the other person, then you're going down the wrong path. But if you're making the change for you and how you want to be at the end of your life, that's where hope is.
Yes. And just additionally, so if you really do want some additional information, insight, resources, and tools, because that's what we're all about. We're about equipping, you with tools and skill sets. Some movies that we have found to be just amazing from a gospel-based perspective is Fireproof and War Room. That's WAR Room. And these two are just amazing and showing how by working on just one person in a relationship can help make a shift in the entire home. So they really are, pretty wonderful. So if you found anything that we have shared with you to be useful, or you're curious on how you can learn more, or how you can join our monthly family program, you can visit us at DesireeWellsCoaching.com. Now, also, if you are curious on maybe how you can take a deeper dive into working on your relationship with your spouse, or how to just enrich your family relationship, we're offering an 8-week program that begins on April 1st that will take you into a deeper dive on learning 10 sabotaging behaviors that we all have, yet we're not always aware of how they're showing up in our lives, in our marriages, in the workplace, within our homes. And through this program, you'll also learn about the 5 antidotes to these sabotaging behaviors and how to apply them even when it's hard. Now, I know we've done a lot of programs through our time together and with our journey in our marriage, but what are your thoughts on this one?
Yes, we have done a lot of marriage programs, and this one really impacted me. It really showed me what I was lacking in my awareness in how I showed up. I was lacking my understanding of how to go forward. And that's what it showed me, is what to do with that. How to overcome those stumbling blocks.
Well, and another thing that I think, just because we've all done this program within our home, is it offers you what you really have control over.
Yes.
It definitely shows you that. And part of what you have control over is your happiness.
Yes.
So you're not waiting for others or things outside of you to create that happiness for you. And I think that's one of the more powerful pieces of that program as well. Now, as we reflect on that, had this program shown up in our life, at any time sooner, I don't know about you, but for me, I really believe our struggles would have been far less. But that's my opinion. What's yours?
And yes, always it would have been far less troubles. We would have been a much happier, much more successful in things. However, it always comes at the time we're prepared to receive it.
Exactly. And that is definitely a coaching concept that we share, is the right time is the time that it shows up and no time sooner. So I guess the question for those of you that are watching this, is the right time for you now to go ahead and make that change and start on that different path for yourself, right, and for the relationships in your life. So in our efforts to support couples and marriages, we are offering this 8-week program for a special rate. We are giving it to you for a buy one, get one free, where normally just for an individual go through, it's $11.99. So this is a pretty awesome deal that we are offering through the end of March. So March 31st would be the final date that you can check out with this. And now you may be wondering, okay, yeah, I want to go through, but maybe my spouse doesn't want to. How does this apply? And what I want to share with you is many times we have women, I will have to say more than the men, that join our programs and they bring a friend. And so that's something that you could do. If you have a friend who you think could benefit from this 8-week program, bring them along as your second that gets that free space. Now, in order to get this option, you need to go ahead and use the coupon code COUPLE at the checkout, and we will include a link on how to check out with this program with the notes for this video, and we'll also include a link that will take you to more information on what's included with this 8-week program. It's located on our website on a video called Our Programs, And in that video, it shares also what you get with this amazing 8-week program that's just phenomenal.
Right.
So,
and I'm glad that you were able to spend some time with us today and be able to share in your journey and our journey in finding hope in your marriage and in your life, in your relationships.
and we are so excited, aren't
We
we?
are excited to see you
to just
soon.
meet you and get to know you and to see the progress that you make with our programs. So, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you
Goodbye.
soon.